A galaxy aflame, imagine, if you will, a galaxy not of eternal war, but of eternal hope. Before the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, before the corpse god sat upon a golden throne fed by the souls of 1,000 psychers daily, there was a time of reason. There was a time of light. We call it the Great Crusade. But to understand the tragedy that befell humanity, one must not look at the monsters of the warp or the Xenos filth that inhabit the stars. One must look into the hearts of fathers and sons. For the greatest empire ever forged was not destroyed by an external enemy, but by a single moment of hesitation, a single seed of jealousy, and the breaking of a bond that should have been eternal. This is the story of how the brightest star in the firmament fell, and in his falling, set the galaxy on fire. The momentum of mankind, a unification of the Sol system, was merely the prelude. Once the techno-barbarians of Terra were quelled and the shipyards of Mars brought into compliance, the Great Crusade erupted outward like a supernova. It was a time of unparalleled expansion. The Legiones Astartes, gene-forged demigods clad in ceramite, were the tip of the spear. But they were not alone. Behind them marched the endless billions of the Imperial Army, the cybernetic horrors of the Skittery cohorts, and the god machines of the Titan legions, whose footsteps shook the crusts of worlds. Imperial iterators, archivists, and remembrancers followed in the wake of the fleets. Hungry for knowledge, they sought to reclaim the scattered fragments of humanity lost during the long night, the age of strife. From the red sands of Mars, the Mechanicum explorer fleets scoured the void for standard template constructs, STCs. The technological echoes of a forgotten golden age, the father and the first son. At the vanguard of this unstoppable tide stood the Emperor of mankind himself. He was a being of golden light and unfathomable psychic might, a figure who commanded loyalty not just through power, but through the sheer gravity of his presence. And at his right hand always was Horus Lupercal, the first found, the favorite. For 3 decades, Horus was the only Primarch recovered, while his brothers were still lost among the stars. Scattering by the whim of the Chaos Gods, Horus stood alone with his father. They were inseparable. In the strategy rooms of the flagship Bucephalus, Horus absorbed the Emperor's wisdom, his statcraft, and his vision for a secular, enlightened galaxy. On the battlefield, they were a symphony of destruction. To watch them fight was to witness the pinnacle of martial prowess. The Emperor, a blinding sun of psychic fire, and Horus, the brutal, efficient Wolf at his side. They conversed for hours after the bloodshed, discussing philosophy, the nature of the warp, though perhaps not all its dangers, and the future of the species. Horus was not just a general. He was the Emperor's hope made manifest. The bond forged in blood, their bond was cemented in moments of near death. On the planet Release, during a siege against fortified bunkers, Horus was struck by a plasma charge that would have vaporized a tank. He fell, consciousness slipping away. It was the Emperor who stood over his fallen son, holding back a tide of enemies single-handedly, his psychic shield flaring against a relentless bombardment until the custodian guard could extract them. But the debt was repaid on the scrap world of Goro. The Crusade had engaged a massive orc wog, a collection of greenskin empires that threatened the core systems. During the climatic teleportation assault, the Emperor found himself isolated. A massive orc warboss, larger than a dreadnought and fueled by the raw wog energy of his kin, managed to grapple the master of mankind. The beast's power claw clamped around the Emperor's throat, dampening his psychic focus, threatening to crush the life from the savior of humanity. It was Horus who arrived. Seeing his father in peril, a fury unlike any other overtook him. With a roar that drowned out the bolter fire, Horus charged. He did not hesitate. He severed the orc chieftain's arm with a single savage strike of his sword. shattering the greenskins' momentum and allowing the Emperor to deliver the killing psychic blow. In that moment, amidst the gore of Goro, the trust between them became absolute. The Emperor knew that if there was one soul in the galaxy he could rely on, it was Horus, the Wolves of Luna, as the other Primarchs were gradually found. Lemon Russ the Wolf King, Ferrus Manus the Gorgon, Fulgrim the Phoenician Horus welcomed them. He was the diplomat, the elder brother who bridged the gaps between their disparate personalities. They looked up to him. He possessed a charisma that could charm a savage tyrant into submission or inspire a legion to march into hell. His own legion, the Xviith, known as the Luna Wolves, reflected his spirit. They were the Speartip. Their doctrine was the Spearhead Assault, a brutal, lightning-fast strike aimed directly at the enemy's command structure. Sever the head and the body dies. This was Horus's way. Efficient, ruthless, glorious, the Luna Wolves were the envy of the Crusade. To fight alongside them was the highest honor for any Imperial Army regiment or fellow Astartes Legion. They were the first among equals, just as their father was. Their white armor, adorned with the Eye of Terra, was a symbol of victory guaranteed. The Shadow of Ambition Horus possessed a supernatural ability to read the battlefield. He could perceive the flow of war not just for his own troops, but for the entire theater of conflict. He knew exactly when to deploy the World Eaters to break a line, or when to call upon the defensive stoicism of the Imperial Fists. He played the Great Crusade like a Grand Master plays regicide, but even the brightest lights cast shadows. As the Crusade pushed further into the unknown, the scale of the war grew. The Emperor began to speak of a future where the Astartes would no longer be needed, a time of peace governed by mortals. And deep within the heart of Horus, beneath the layers of loyalty and glory, a tiny, almost imperceptible seed of doubt began to take root. Was he merely a weapon to be discarded once the war was won? For now, glory was all that mattered. And the greatest glory was yet to come. The sensors of the expeditionary fleet had picked up a massive concentration of orcs in the Ulanar sector. It was an empire of greenskins so vast it posed a threat to Terra itself. The Emperor called for a muster. This would not just be a battle. It would be the apex of the Great Crusade. It would be the triumph that would define the era, and it would be the beginning of the end. The Beast of Ulanar. The Ulanar sector was not merely a cluster of worlds occupied by Xenos. It was a tumor in the side of the galaxy. Here, the orcs had done what the Imperium feared most. They had organized, under the brutal, cunning lash of Overlord Erlak Erg, the Greenskins had forged an empire. These were not the feral scavengers of lesser systems. These were soldiers clad in scrap plate armor thick enough to turn lost fire, wielding weapons that defied physics with their crude lethality. They had enslaved millions of humans, turning hollowed out worlds into factories for their endless war machine. To leave Ulanar unchecked was to invite the extinction of the human race. The Wog, field generated by billions of orcs, was a psychic scream that echoed in the warp, drowning out the Astronomicon. It was the greatest threat the Great Crusade had faced since the Rangdan Genocides. The War Council of Demigods. To break this green empire, the Emperor mustered a force of apocalyptic proportions. Over 100,000 space marines drawn from 3 legions gathered: the stoic Ultramarines, the lightning-fast White Scars, and the feral, noble Luna Wolves. Alongside them came 8 million Imperial Army troopers and a grand convocation of the Titan legions. Yet, raw numbers would not suffice against the endless green tide. In the stratagem of the flagship Bucephalus, the Emperor laid out the plan, but it was Horus who refined the blade. Roboute Guilliman and his Ultramarines would be the anvil, striking the outer worlds of the Ulanar system to draw the orc fleets away. Jagatai Khan and the White Scars would be the Harriers, using hit-and-run tactics to bleed the orc reinforcements dry in the void. This would leave the heart exposed. Ulanar Prime, the capital, The throne of the Overlord, the Emperor and Horus, father and son, would lead the strike. It was the spearhead doctrine perfected. While the wider war raged across a dozen star systems, the Luna Wolves would bypass the attrition and strike directly at the head of the serpent. The descent into hell, the assault on Ullanor Prime, began not with a bombardment, but with a teleportation flare that blinded the sensors of the Orc scrap towers. The Emperor led the main assault with the Custodian Guard, drawing the bulk of Urlak, Urg's army, into a meat grinder battle at the base of the Overlord's Fortress Mountain. It was a distraction on a godlike scale. While the Master of Mankind held the line against a green ocean, Horus played his gambit. He did not deploy his entire legion. Instead, he selected the tip of the spear. He chose the Justaran, clad in midnight black cataphracti Terminator armor. The Justaran were the elite of the First Company. They were the hardest warriors in a legion of killers, led by First Captain Ezekiel Abadna, a warrior who fought with a ferocity that bordered on the psychotic, tempered only by an unbreakable loyalty to his Primarch, the throne room of scrap. The air inside the Overlord's palace tasted of grease, blood, and ozone. Horus and his Terminators materialized deep within the fortress, bypassing miles of trenches and kill zones. The teleportation flare died, replaced instantly by the roar of storm bolters. They were vastly outnumbered. The throne room was a cavernous hall of rusted iron and trophy racks, filled with the Overlord's personal guard knobs the size of Ogryns, clad in mega armor powered by dirty nuclear engines. "Kill them all," Horus roared, his voice amplified by his armor's Vox grill. He wielded a pair of lightning claws, ancient weapons that crackled with blue energy. He moved faster than a being of his size should be able to, a blur of white ceramite and deadly light. The Justarin formed a circle of iron around their gene father. Combi bolters barked a relentless staccato rhythm, detonating orc skulls and rupturing fuel tanks. Chain fists tore through crude iron plating. It was a slaughter, but it was a desperate one. For every knob that fell, two more surged forward, driven by the primal Wog energy of their leader. The duel at the summit, at the far end of the hall, seated upon a throne made of wrecked Titan plating, set Urlak Urg. The Overlord was a monster of muscle and cybernetics, standing nearly as tall as a Primarch. Seeing the golden-skinned giant carving through his bodyguards, Urg did not cower. He laughed a wet, guttural sound and charged. The collision between Horus and Urg shook the foundations of the palace. The orc wielded a power claw that snapped with the force of a hydraulic press. He caught Horus's initial strike, the energies of their weapons flaring white-hot. "You are nothing," Horus spat, ducking under a decapitating swing. "You are filth." Horus drove a lightning claw into the orc's side, tearing through layers of scrap armor and tough flesh. Urg roared, backhanding the Primarch with enough force to dent his pauldrons. Horus skidded back, his boots carving furrows in the metal floor. The Justaran tried to intervene, to aid their father, but they were drowning in a sea of green. Abaddon, his black armor slick with gore, fought back-to-back with little Horus Aximand, holding the line against impossible odds to keep the duel pure. They knew that if they interfered, they might distract the Primarch. They had to trust in his might. The fall of the Overlord, the duel raged. Horus, bleeding from a dozen wounds, found his rhythm. He was the Wolf of Luna, the master of the kill. He baited the orc, feigning weakness, allowing Urg to overextend with a clumsy rage-fueled strike. Horus pivoted. In a single fluid motion, he severed the hydraulic cables of Urg's power claw, rendering the weapon useless. Before the Overlord could recover, Horus lunged. His twin lightning claws punched through the orc's chest, lifting the massive beast off the ground. Urg coughed black blood, his red eyes dimming. Horus did not give him the dignity of a final word. He carried the dying warlord to the open balcony of the palace, overlooking the millions of orcs fighting the Emperor below. With a roar of triumph, Horus hurled the corpse of Erlakirg off the precipice. The body tumbled down the side of the fortress, crashing into the fray below. The effect was instantaneous. The psychic feedback of the Overlord's death rippled through the Orc horde. The Wog, energy that sustained them, shattered. The unity that made them an empire dissolved into confusion and infighting. The survivor Horus turned back to the throne room. Silence had fallen. The knobs, sensing the death of their leader, had broken. The floor was carpeted with the dead. Of the elite circle of Justarin that had teleported with him, only one remained standing amidst the carnage. Ezekiel Abaddon. His Terminator armor was rent and torn, sparks flying from severed servos, his storm bolter empty and smoking. He stood over a pile of orc corpses, breathing heavily. The last sentinel of the spearhead. Horus walked to him, placing a hand on his son's battered shoulder. "It is done, Ezekiel. The galaxy is ours." Abaddon looked up, his eyes burning with a fierce fanatical pride. For the Emperor, for the War Master. Outside, the guns of the Titan legions fell silent. The green tide was receding. The Great Crusade was won. But amidst the wreckage and the glory, the stage was being set for a tragedy that would eclipse the war against the Orcs. The victory was absolute, but the cost of peace was about to become terrifyingly clear. The Emperor had a proclamation to make, one that would change the fate of the galaxy forever. The scouring of a continent victory at Ullanor was not enough for the Emperor of mankind. He required a statement. He required a spectacle so grand that it would echo through the warp itself, a declaration that the galaxy belonged to humanity. To achieve this, the Mechanicum deployed vast cohorts of geoformers to the surface of Ullanor Prime. They did not merely clear a parade ground. They leveled an entire continent. Mountains were ground to dust, rivers were diverted, and the uneven crust of the world was smoothed into a plane of absolute, artificial perfection. Upon this flat expanse, the Imperium erected the Trophy Road. It was a highway of granite and black marble, kilometers wide, flanked by poles atop which were mounted the skulls of the Orc nobility. It was a grisly monument to the genocide that had just occurred, a road paved with the bones of the conquerors. At the end of this road stood a pavilion the size of a city, a structure of gold and ivory, constructed solely for a ceremony that would last but a single day. The gathering of angels never before had so many of the Emperor's sons stood together. 9 Primarchs gathered at Ullanor. They were the demigods of the New Age, each a facet of their father's brilliance. There was Sanguinius, the great angel, his wings folded like a mantle of snow-white feathers, radiating a beauty that made mortals weep. There was Angron of the World Eaters, a twitching ball of suppressed rage, the butcher's nails in his skull ticking like a bomb. There was Mortarion, the Death Lord, gaunt and reaping hook in hand, smelling of chemical ash. There was Lorgar Aurelian, the golden-skinned zealot, whose devotion to his father bordered on worship. Jagatai Khan stood aloof, his smile sharp and predatory. Rogul Dorn stood like a fortress wall, immovable and stern. Fulgrim preened, his armor purple and gold, seeking perfection in every stance. Magnus the Red towered over them all, his singular eye burning with arcane knowledge. And above them all stood Horus. He was magnificent. His armor, the white of the Luna wolves, was polished to a mirror sheen. He stood at the Emperor's right hand, the favored son, the hero who had cast the Orc overlord from the heights. The bond between them seemed unbreakable, a dual sun around which the galaxy orbited, the golden silence. The parade was a display of military might that defied comprehension. Billions of Imperial Army soldiers marched in perfect unison, a sea of bayonets and lasguns that stretched to the horizon. The Titan legions walked in the rear, their war horns blasting distinct notes that shattered the clouds above. The Astartes marched by legion, 14 of them represented, their bolters held across their chests in salute. When the Emperor stepped forward to the edge of the pavilion, A silence fell over the billions. It was a psychic pressure, a command of absolute obedience that bypassed the ears and spoke directly to the soul. He spoke of the crusade. He spoke of the destiny of mankind to rule the stars, to cast aside the darkness of old night. He praised the valor of the soldiers, awarding the veterans the onyx and gold, a triumph stripe forged from the melted casings of bolter rounds fired during the battle. But then, the tone shifted. The withdrawal. The crusade is not yet done, the Emperor's voice boomed, resonating in the chest of every warrior present. But my part in its vanguard is at an end. A shockwave of confusion rippled through the Primarchs. They exchanged glances. The Emperor, the greatest warrior of them all, was leaving. I must return to Terra, he continued. There is a great work that requires my attention. A project that will secure the future of humanity for all eternity. It is a burden I must bear alone in the dungeons beneath the palace. He did not explain what this project was. He did not speak of the webway or the need to free humanity from reliance on the warp. He offered only silence and the command to obey. To the Primarchs, creatures bred for war and loyalty, this felt like an abandonment. Had they failed? Had they done something wrong? Or worse, were they no longer needed? The first among equals, to lead the armies of humanity in my stead, the Emperor proclaimed, placing a heavy, gauntlet hand upon Horus's shoulder. I name a War Master. The title hung in the air, heavy with implication. War Master, not just a general but a supreme commander. One brother set above the rest. One son given the authority of the father. Horus Lupercal, the Emperor declared. I name you War Master. You shall be the avatar of my will. Your voice shall be my voice. Your command shall be my command. Lead my armies to the edge of the galaxy, my son. Finish what we have begun. The crowd erupted. The roar of billions of voices was a physical force, a wall of sound that shook the pavilion. The Luna Wolves beat their chest plates, chanting, Lupercal. Lupercal. Horus knelt, accepting the honor. But as he looked up into his father's eyes, he saw something that chilled him. He saw a distance. The Emperor was already gone. His mind turned toward Terra and the secret work that awaited him. The mantle of War Master was not just a gift. It was a burden. The Emperor was handing Horus the galaxy to conquer, while he retreated to the shadows. The seeds of bitterness while the soldiers cheered. The reaction among the Primarchs was fractured. Sanguinius embraced Horus, his joy genuine, for he loved his brother without jealousy. Fulgrim, too, offered congratulations, though his eyes glittered with a strange intensity, but others were darker. Angron spat on the ground, seeing the Emperor's departure as the act of a coward who refused to bleed with his warriors. Perturabo, the Lord of Iron, simmered in resentment, feeling that his thankless toil in the siege trenches had been overlooked yet again. Even Rabut Gilliman, the logical statesman, felt a pang of concern. Could one man, even a Primarch, manage the logistics of a galaxy-wide war without the Emperor's unifying presence? The cracks were microscopic, hairline fractures in the edifice of the Imperium, but they were there. And in the warp, the Chaos Gods watched, and they smiled. They saw the jealousy. They saw the feeling of abandonment. They saw the pride. The sons of Horus, in the aftermath of the ceremony, the Emperor made one final gesture. He proposed that the 16th Legion, the Luna Wolves, be renamed the Sons of Horus. It was the ultimate honor, to have a legion bear the name of its commander rather than a title of the Emperor's devising. Horus, initially, declined. He claimed he was unworthy, that the Luna Wolves had earned their name in blood. But as the Emperor's fleet prepared to depart, leaving Horus alone at the helm of the crusade, the War Master's resolve wavered. He felt the weight of the crown. He felt the gaze of his brothers, some envious, some judging. He needed to assert his authority. In a private council with Sanguinius, Horus confessed his fears. "He leaves me, brother. He leaves me to herd these cats, to fight these wars, while he sits on a throne of gold." "Why?" "He trusts you," Sanguinius assured him. "He trusts you above all others." "Then I must be strong," Horus decided. "I must be the figurehead they need." And so, the Luna Wolves became the sons of Horus. Their armor changed from the stark white of the moon to the sea green of Chthonian oceans. The Eye of Terra on their pauldrons was replaced by the Eye of Horus, an unblinking amber eye. The long shadow of Terra, the Emperor's fleet, broke orbit. The massive golden Bucephalus leading a procession of thousands of ships back toward the Sol system. Horus watched them go from the observation deck of the Vengeful Spirit. He stood alone in the dark, the new War Master of the Imperium. He was the most powerful being in the galaxy, second only to his father. He commanded millions of Astartes and billions of soldiers. Yet, as the warp drive engaged and the Emperor vanished from his sensors, Horus Lupercal felt a sensation he had never experienced before. He felt small, and in the silence of his mind, a whisper began. It was not a voice, but a feeling. A feeling that he had been used. A feeling that the Emperor was not building a kingdom for his sons, but for himself. A feeling that the Primarchs were merely tools, weapons to be blunted against the horrors of the galaxy, and then discarded when peace was finally won. "Why, Father?" Horus whispered to the empty void. "Why have you forsaken us?" The Great Crusade continued, but the spirit of it had changed. The Golden Age was over. The Age of Darkness was waiting in the wings, and the stage was set for the Interrex, and the blade that would cut the soul of the War Master in two. The burden of the crown Horus Lupercal sat upon the command throne of the Vengeful Spirit, the weight of the galaxy pressing down upon his shoulders. The title of War Master was a crown of iron. He was no longer just a warrior. He was a statesman, a mediator, a judge. He had to wrangle the egos of his brothers, the brooding Mortarion, the volatile Angron, the perfectionist Fulgrim. He had to manage the logistics of 1,000,000 supply lines. And beneath it all, the silence from Terra was deafening. The Emperor sent no missives, offered no guidance. Horus was alone in the dark. He sought to prove himself not just a conqueror, but a visionary. He wanted to show his father that the Great Crusade could build as well as destroy. The Interrex, a mirror of what could be the 63rd Expeditionary Fleet, eventually came upon a civilization known as the Interrex. They were an anomaly that challenged the very core of the imperial truth. The Interrex were human, descended from ancient colonists, but they had not purged the alien. Instead, they coexisted with the species known as the Kinnebrek, a technologically advanced, simian-like race. The Imperium's doctrine demanded immediate genocide. Suffer not the alien to live. But Horus stayed his hand. He saw in the Interrex a reflection of the Emperor's dream, a prosperous, advanced human society. They possessed technology that rivaled, and in some cases surpassed, the Mechanicum. They used musical language, they wore sleek centaur-like power armor, and they lived in harmony. Horus ordered his legion to stand down. He opened negotiations. He wanted to bring the Interrex into the fold peacefully, to show the Emperor a victory won with words rather than bolters. He spent days debating their leaders, impressed by their culture, but disturbed by their warnings. The Interrex spoke of a primordial threat they called cows. They warned Horus that the warp was not merely a dimension of energy, but a sentient, malevolent force. To Horus, steeped in the Emperor's secular imperial truth which denied the existence of gods, this sounded like superstition, the serpent in the garden, but there was a snake in the grass. First Chaplain Erebus of the Word-Bearers Legion had attached himself to Horus's fleet. Outwardly, he was a counselor and a spiritual guide. Inwardly, he was a monster. His loyalty lay not with the Emperor, nor even truly with his own Primarch Logar, but with the ruinous powers. Erebus saw the danger of peace. If Horus succeeded in integrating the Interix, the War Master would be vindicated, and the Imperium would grow stronger. Chaos required conflict. Chaos required the fall of the brightest star. While Horus debated philosophy, Erebus infiltrated the Hall of Devices, the Interix's museum of weaponry. He sought a specific artifact, a weapon forged by the Kinebrak technology, but tainted by the touch of the warp. It was a blade made of flint and malice, an athem. But this was no ordinary knife. It was an anathem. It was a weapon that, once tuned to a specific target, could cut through anything flesh, ceramic, soul, and destiny. Erebus stole the blade and set the Hall of Devices ablaze. The collapse of reason, the Interix, sensing the theft and the corruption, believed Horus had betrayed them. They believed the Imperium was an agent of chaos. Violence erupted instantly. The negotiations dissolved into a firefight. Horus, confused and heartbroken, tried to calm the situation, but the Interix forces opened fire on the sons of Horus. Forced to defend his sons, Horus's demeanor cracked. The statesman vanished. The Wolf of Luna returned. With a roar of frustration, he unleashed his legion. The sons of Horus, the Death Guard, and the Luna Wolves tore through the Interix civilization. The advanced, beautiful cities were leveled. The Kinebrak were slaughtered. Horus stood amidst the burning ruins of Zenobia, the Interix capital. He had won the battle, but he had lost the argument. He felt he had failed his father's vision. He was just a killer after all. They left me no choice, Horus muttered to himself, watching the spires burn. But the doubt gnawed at him. Was the Emperor's way truly the only way? Or was the galaxy simply too broken to be fixed? The lure of Davin, in this moment of vulnerability, Erebus made his move. He suggested the fleet divert to the Davin system. It was a feral world, brought into compliance years ago by Logar and the Word-Bearers. Erebus claimed that the Imperial Governor, Yugen Temba, had gone rogue and rebelled against the Emperor. Horus, seeking a simple, straightforward fight to cleanse the palate of the Interix disaster, agreed. He would crush this petty rebellion personally, but Davin was not as it seemed. The moon of Davin was a nightmare landscape. The swamps were thick with a cloying, sweet rot stench. The fog was a sickly yellow, and the enemies were not men-dot as the sons of Horus made planetfall. They faced a horde of the walking dead. Plague zombies, their bodies bloated with gas and flies, shambled out of the mists. It was a horror show of Nurgle's Garden, though the Astartes did not yet know the name. The duel on the Glory of Terra. The source of the corruption was the crashed wreckage of the ship Glory of Terra, where the traitor Governor Temba had made his lair. Horus led the spearhead, storming the wreckage. He left his Mournival, his inner circle of advisors including Garviel Loken and Ezekiel Abaddon behind. Pushing forward alone to confront the traitor, he found Temba on the command deck. But the man was no longer human. He was a bloated mound of rotting flesh, fusing with the command throne. Flies buzzed in clouds around his head. In his hand, he held a sword that shimmered with an unnatural, oil-slick light. It was the Anathem, stolen by Erebus and gifted to this pawn of chaos. Why Temba? Horus demanded, his storm bolter raised. Why turn against the light? There is no light, the thing that was Temba gurgled. Only the rot. Only the grandfather. Temba lunged with surprising speed. Horus fired, blowing chunks of rotten meat from the governor's body, but the creature did not stop. They clashed. The Anathem met Horus's power sword, and the Primarch was shocked to feel the force of the blow. This mutant was unnaturally strong. Horus, the greatest warrior of the Imperium, parried and struck. He severed Temba's arm, then drove his sword through the creature's chest. It was a killing blow, but as Temba died, he lashed out one last time. The Anathem nicked Horus's shoulder. It cut through the pauldrons of the War Master's artificer armor as if it were paper. It sliced through the Primarch's flesh dot. It was a small wound, A scratch. But the poison on the blade was not biological. It was a conceptual toxin, distilled from the pure malice of the warp. The fall of a god. Horus stumbled. His vision blurred. The great war master, who had shrugged off anti-tank missiles and wrestled orcs, fell to one knee. The Mournival burst onto the bridge, slaughtering the remaining zombies. They found their father gasping for air, the wound on his shoulder turning a necrotic black, veins of corruption spreading across his chest like a spiderweb. "Father!" Abaddon screamed, rushing to his side. "It burns. Horus gasped, his eyes rolling back. "It feels like ice. The War Master collapsed. Panic, absolute and unadulterated, seized the sons of Horus. A Primarch could not die. They were immortal. They were the sons of the Emperor. But Horus was convulsing, his super physiology failing to clot the blood, failing to purge the toxin. They carried him back to the vengeful spirit. The apothecaries worked feverishly, their narthetiums whirring, injecting stims, coagulants, and detoxifiers. Nothing worked. The Primarch's vitals were fading. The Legion was headless. The greatest of them was dying, the Serpent Lodge amidst the chaos and the grief. Erebus stepped forward. He wore a mask of concern, but his heart sang with triumph. "The apothecaries cannot save him," Erebus told the frantic Mournival. "This is a wound of the soul, not the body. Imperial science has no cure for this." "Then what?" Abaddon roared, grabbing the chaplain by the gorget. "What can save him?" "There is a temple on the surface of Davin," Erebus whispered, his voice smooth as silk. "The Serpent Lodge. They possess ancient healing arts. Arts that predate the Imperium. They can draw the poison out." Garviel Loken, the voice of reason, protested. "This is superstition, sorcery. The Emperor forbade it at the Council of Nicaea." "The Emperor is not here," Abaddon shouted, shoving Loken back. "Horus is dying. I will not let him die for the sake of rules written on Terra. We go to the lodge." The Mournival was split, but grief won out over reason. In their desperation to save their father, the sons of Horus made the fatal choice. They carried the dying War Master down to the surface, into the primitive stone temple of the Serpent Lodge. They laid Horus upon the altar. The priests, chanting in tongues that hurt the ears, closed the heavy stone doors. Outside, the Legion waited in the rain, praying for a miracle. Inside, the ritual began. Horus Lupercal was alone in the dark, his body broken, his mind defenseless. And waiting for him in the shadows of his own fever dreams were the Chaos Gods, ready to make him an offer he couldn't refuse. The War Master had fallen. The heretic was about to rise. The ritual in the dark, inside the temple of the Serpent Lodge, the air was thick enough to choke a mortal man. It smelled of burnt herbs, dried blood, and something ancient, the musk of a predator that had stalked the galaxy since the first stars were born. Horus Lupercal lay upon a slab of cold stone, stripped of his armor, his body a map of scars and sweat. The wound on his shoulder frothed with black ichor. The anathem's poison defying the Emperor's genecraft. The lodge priests, their faces hidden behind masks of bone and leather, circled the dying demigod. Their chanting was a low rhythmic drone that seemed to vibrate in the teeth of the observers. Erebus stood at the head of the altar, his face solemn, though his heart beat with the frantic rhythm of anticipation. He began the incantation, words in the tongue of the primeval chaos, unlocking the door between the Materium and the Immaterium. Outside, the rain lashed against the stone. Inside, the shadows detached themselves from the walls. Horus gasped, his back arching, and then he fell still. His spirit had been cut loose. The wolf in sheep's clothing Horus opened his eyes. He was no longer in the temple. He stood in a field of tall grass beneath a golden sky. He was whole. The pain was gone. "My lord," a voice called out. Horus turned. Walking towards him was a figure he had mourned for years. It was Hastur Sejanus, his beloved captain, the man whose death had sparked the war with the Indirects. Sejanus looked radiant, his smile warm and familiar. "Sejanus?" Horus whispered, disbelief warring with joy. "You are dead." "Death is but a threshold, father," the figure replied. But this was not Sejanus. It was Erebus, wearing the face of the dead to bypass the Primarch's defenses. "I have come to show you the truth. The truth our father has hidden from us." The vision of the God Emperor, the scenery shifted violently. They stood now on Terra, but not the Terra Horus knew. This was a nightmare of Gothic spires reaching into the stratosphere, of skies choked with incense smoke. Everywhere he looked, there were statues. Statues of the Emperor, but they did not depict him as a man, or a general, or a scientist. They depicted him as a god. Horus walked through the streets of this future Terra, horror dawning in his heart. He saw billions of citizens prostrating themselves, chanting prayers to the God Emperor. He saw the ecclesiarchy, priests in opulent robes burning heretics who dared to deny the Emperor's divinity. "He lied to us," Sejanus whispered in his ear. "He destroyed all religions, burned all churches, only to clear the path for his own. He seeks apotheosis, Horus. He left the crusade not to work for humanity, but to ascend to godhood. And when he does, he will have no need for his sons." Horus looked at the plinths where the statues of the Primarch stood. He saw Sanguinius, revered as an angel. He saw Guilliman, the lawgiver. But when he looked for his own statue, for the statue of the War Master, he found an empty plinth. Or worse, a plinth defaced, the name erased from history. "He will discard you," the voice hissed, "just as he discarded the Thunder Warriors. You are a tool, broken and forgotten." The secret of the gene labs, the vision shifted again. They were deep beneath the Imperial Palace, decades in the past. They stood in the Emperor's secret laboratories, amidst the bubbling tanks where the Primarchs were created. Horus watched his creator, the man he called father, standing before a swirling vortex of warp energy. He saw the Emperor speaking with the entities of the warp, bargaining, trading. "He did not create you with science alone," Sejanus revealed. "He lacked the power to breathe life into his creations. So he stole it. He made a pact with the powers of the warp to grant you your strength, and then he reneged on the deal. He is a thief and a liar. You are not just his sons. You are children of the warp, denied your true heritage." Horus watched the infant Primarchs scattered into the void. "He let us go," Horus realized, his heart hardening. "He allowed us to be scattered so that we would be tested. It was all a game." The Crimson King intervened suddenly, the illusion shattered like glass. The sky tore open, and a giant eye of burning red fire glared down upon them. "Brother!" A voice roared, shaking the foundations of the dream. "Do not listen. It is a lie." Magnus the Red burst into the vision. He had projected his spirit across the galaxy, breaking the Edict of Nicaea in a desperate attempt to save the War Master. His form was shifting, unstable, battling the psychic might of the Chaos Gods that sought to bar his way. "Horus!" Magnus pleaded, manifesting as a titan of copper skin and red hair. "This is Erebus. He wears the face of Sejanus to manipulate you. The future you saw is but one possibility, a future brought about by your betrayal, not the cause of it." Horus looked between the two figures, the beloved son and the sorceress brother. "He speaks in riddles," Sejanus sneered, his face momentarily flickering to reveal the tattooed visage of Erebus. "He is a slave to a father who censured him. Why does he defend the man who humiliated him at Nicaea? Because he is afraid. Are you afraid, Horus? I am the War Master." Horus bellowed. "I fear nothing." The offer, the pretense dropped. The environment dissolved into a swirling vortex of the four great powers. Khorne, Nurgle, Tzeentch, and Slaanesh did not manifest fully, but their presence was a crushing weight. They made their offer. The Emperor seeks to become a god and enslave humanity in ignorance. He will kill you, Horus. He abandoned you to die on Davin. We offer you life. We offer you the power to save the Imperium from his tyranny. We offer you the galaxy, not as a servant, but as a ruler. Do not do this, brother. Magnus cried, his spirit form fraying under the assault of the warp. If you turn, you burn the galaxy. You destroy everything we built. Horus looked at Magnus. What did we build, Magnus? A lie? A kingdom for a tyrant who hides in the dark while we bleed? He looked at the void where the Emperor should have been. He felt the coldness of the anathema wound, the encroaching death. He felt the bitterness of Ullanor. If I die here, Horus said softly, his lie wins. If I live, I can set humanity free. Horus Lupercal made his choice. He turned his back on Magnus. He turned his back on Terra. He reached out and took the hand of the warp. I will not be a slave, Horus declared. And I will not let him become a god. Magnus screamed as he was banished from the vision, his soul flung back to Prospero. Carrying the terrible knowledge of what was to come, the awakening on the stone slab in the Serpent Lodge, Horus gasped. His eyes snapped open. They were no longer the warm brown of the Luna Wolf. They were dark, swimming with the energies of the Immaterium. The wound on his shoulder had closed, leaving a scar that looked like an eye. He sat up, his body radiating a power that made the air crackle. The lodge priests fell to their faces in terror and awe. Erebus stepped forward, a triumphant smile on his lips. War Master, you are reborn. Horus looked at his hands. He felt strong, stronger than he had ever been. But he also felt cold. A piece of his soul was gone, replaced by something infinite and hungry. Prepare the fleet, Horus commanded, his voice deep and terrible. We have work to do. The gathering of the traitors in the weeks that followed, Horus did not strike immediately. He was cunning. He needed allies. He needed to rot the Imperium from within before he struck the killing blow. He turned his charisma, now supercharged by chaos, upon his brothers. He spoke to Angron, feeding the Red Angel's hatred for the Emperor, who had stolen him from his gladiator kin. He promised Angron a war without end, a war where he could finally be free. He spoke to Mortarion, playing on the Death Lord's hatred of tyrants and sorcerers, convincing him that the Emperor was just another witch king like the ones on Barbaros. He spoke to Fulgrim, but Fulgrim was already falling. The Phoenician had recovered a silver sword from the Lar Temple, a weapon that contained a greater demon of Slaanesh. The blade whispered to him, twisting his pursuit of perfection into a descent into excess. When Horus revealed his plan, Fulgrim was ready to listen. The web was spun. 4 legions, the sons of Horus, the World Eaters, the Death Guard, and the Emperor's children were ready to turn. But they needed to purge their own ranks. There were still loyalists within the traitor legions, men like Garviel Loken, Saul Tarvitz, and Nathaniel Garro, who held the Emperor's light in their hearts. Horus devised a plan to eliminate them. A tactical deployment to the Isstvan system. It would be a slaughter. The Age of Darkness had truly begun. The War Master was dead. Long live the War Master. The calling of the faithful, the Corral city of Isstvan V was a jewel of the Imperium, a hive of soaring spires and billions of souls. But it had turned from the Emperor's light, embracing a strange, sonic-worshipping religion. To the outside observer, Horus's deployment of 4 legions, the Sons of Horus, World Eater's Death Guard, and Emperor's children seemed like overwhelming force for a simple compliance action. But the war was a lie. The target was not the rebellious population of Isstvan III. The target was the legions themselves. Horus, Angron, Mortarion, and Fulgrim had audited their own ranks. They identified every captain, every squad leader, and every veteran who harbored too much loyalty to the Emperor, or who possessed a moral compass too rigid to bend to the new order. These men Garviel Loken, Tarik Torgadon, Saul Tarvitz, Nero Vipus were the old breed. They were the heroes of the Great Crusade, and for that, they had to die under the guise of a spearhead assault to crush the rebellion. Tens of thousands of these loyalist Astartes were deployed to the surface. They fought bravely, unaware that the fleet in orbit was not there to support them, but to execute them. The silent betrayal aboard the Vengeful Spirit. Horus watched the tactical hololiths. The loyalists had taken the Corral City. Victory was theirs. It was time. Load the bio-warfare shells, Horus commanded, his voice devoid of pity. The Life Eater virus. The bridge crew hesitated for a fraction of a second. Using such weapons on a human population was forbidden, let alone on Astartes, but the War Master's glare silenced all dissent. The launch keys were turned, but a single thread of hope remained. Saul Tarvitz, a captain of the Emperor's children who had been suspiciously held back in the fleet, discovered the plot. He couldn't stop the launch, but he could scream a warning. Stealing a Thunderhawk gunship, Tarvitz flew through the barrage of his own fleet. Breaking atmosphere as the virus bombs began to fall, he managed to reach the surface, his Voxcaster screaming a single desperate command to his brothers on the ground. Take cover. Seal the bunkers. They are bombing us. The death of a world. The sky turned black with drop pods, but they carried no soldiers. They burst in mid-air, releasing a thick, dark mist. The Life Eater virus settled over the Coral City. The horror that followed was absolute. The virus did not just kill, it devoured. In seconds, organic matter began to rot and liquefy. Billions of civilians dissolved into screaming puddles of sludge. Astartes, their physiology reinforced against every known toxin, found their seals failing. Ceramite joints leaked. Those who didn't make it to the sealed bunkers drowned in their own melting flesh. The roar of the city died, replaced by a wet, slurping silence. The lush gardens, the teeming millions, the very atmosphere, everything organic was reduced to a flammable, gaseous soup. In orbit, Horus watched the death of a world with cold detachment. Now, he whispered. Ignite it. A single lance strike from the Vengeful Spirit pierced the clouds. It struck the gas-saturated atmosphere. The planet screamed. A wall of fire, a global firestorm, swept across the surface. Continents burned. Oceans boiled away. The entire world was scrubbed clean by a purifying inferno, leaving nothing but ash and glass. The phoenix from the ash Horus waited for the fires to die down, expecting silence. He expected a graveyard, but as the sensors cleared, a signal beamed up from the surface. Then another. Then thousands. Life signs detected, the sensor officer stammered, terrified. They survived. Deep in the catacombs and airtight bunkers beneath the Coral City, the warning of Saul Tarvitz had saved them. Tens of thousands of Astartes, sons of Horus, World Eaters, Death Guard, Emperor's children, emerged from the rubble. They looked up at the blackened sky, at the fleet that had betrayed them. Disbelief turned to sorrow. Sorrow turned to rage. They tried to burn us. Garviel Loken roared, slamming his fist into a ruined wall. Our father. He tried to burn us like refuse. The Red Angel descends. Horus prepared to bombard the planet again, to finish the job from orbit. It would have been the tactical choice, the smart choice, but he had lost control of the NGR on the bridge of the Conqueror. The Primarch of the World Eaters saw his sons surviving down below. He saw them standing defiant. The butcher's nails bit into his brain, demanding blood. He could not let them die by bomb. They had to die by the axe. No! Angren bellowed, defying Horus's orders. I will take their skulls myself. Angren launched himself in a drop pod, leading 50 companies of traitor World Eaters down to the surface. The trap was broken. The massacre had become a war. Horus, cursing his brother's lack of control, had no choice. He could not leave Angron alone on the surface, or the Loyalists might actually kill him. He ordered the full deployment of the traitor legions, brother against brother. The Battle of Isstvan V was the first time in history that Space Marines fought Space Marines on a massive scale. It was a war of unmatched brutality. Bolters that were designed to kill Xenos were turned against brothers who had fought back-to-back for 2 centuries. In the ruins of the Corral City, Garviel Loken and Tariq Torgadon led the Loyalist Sons of Horus. They painted over the Eye of Horus on their armor, reclaiming the symbol of the Luna Wolves. They fought not for survival, but for spite. They fought to make Horus bleed. Saul Tarvitz rallied the Loyalist Emperor's children, turning the Precentor's palace into a fortress. Ancient Rillinar, a dreadnought of the Emperor's children, stood as a tower of defiance, his assault cannon reaping a toll on the traitors who had shamed his legion's name, the Death Guard Loyalists. Led by Battle Captain Nathaniel Garro, who had been injured and remained in orbit, and Ullus Temitor on the ground, faced the slow, inexorable advance of Mortarion himself. The Primarch walked through the poison smog, his silence more terrifying than Angron's roar, killing his own sons with his scythe. Silence, the final stand. The war lasted for months. The Loyalists dug into the ruins, made the traitors pay for every meter of ground in blood. But they were cut off, unsupplied, and outnumbered. The end came in the Precentor's palace. The traitor titans of the Legio Mortis walked, their plasma annihilators leveling the fortifications. Angron, a blood-soaked avatar of slaughter, breached the lines, butchering his way through his former sons. Loken and Torgadon stood on the roof of the Parliament building, waiting. And then, the Mournival came for them. Ezekiel Abaddon and Horus Aximand, the traitors, confronted their former brothers. It was a tragedy written in bolter fire and chains words. Torgadon, the Joker, the soul of the Legion, was beheaded by Aximand, who wept as he did it. Loken fought Abaddon. It was a duel of skill versus brute force, but Loken was exhausted, wounded, and heartbroken. Abaddon crushed him, leaving him buried beneath tons of rubble as the building collapsed. The message: the Loyalists were wiped out. The planet was a tomb. But amidst the slaughter, a single frigate, the Eisenstein, commanded by Nathaniel Garro of the Death Guard, had managed to break the blockade. Garro had witnessed the betrayal. He bore witness to the atrocity. And now he fled into the warp, carrying the darkest news ever to be delivered to the throne world. Horus stood in the ruins of the Coral City, the ash of his sons coating his armor. He had purged his ranks. He had forged his new army in the fire of betrayal. But he had failed to silence the truth. "Let them run," Horus sneered, looking up at the stars. "Let them tell the Emperor I am coming. Let him fear me." The opening moves were done. The galaxy was now at war. And the next destination was Isstvan V, where Horus would break the back of the Loyalist legions forever. The frigate in the dark, the Eisenstein, was a wounded beast. A Death Guard frigate, commanded by Battle Captain Nathaniel Garro. It fled the Isstvan system with its engines screaming. It carried a cargo heavier than any munitions: the truth. Garro and his 70 loyal Death Guard, along with Iactan crews of the Luna Wolves and a handful of civilian remembrancers, had escaped the betrayal. They had seen the virus bombs fall. They had seen the galaxy burn, but escaping the blockade was only the first trial. To outrun the vengeful fleet of Horus, the Eisenstein had to dive into the warp, but the warp was roiling. The psychic scream of the Isstvan atrocity had whipped the Immaterium into a frenzy. To jump now with a damaged Geller field was suicide. To stay was death. Garro chose the jump, the Lord of Flies. As the ship tore through the membrane of reality, the nightmare began. The Geller field, the bubble of reality that protects ships from the raw chaos of the warp, flickered. It did not fail completely, but it thinned. And in the lower decks, where the traitor Commander Grolgor and his men had been killed by the virus bombs earlier, something stirred. The Life Eater virus usually left nothing but sludge. But here, in the warp, the laws of physics bowed to the laws of symbolism. Grolgor and his traitors rose. They were bloated, dripping with necrotic slime, their armor fused to their rotting flesh. They were the first of Nurgle's gifts to the legions. They were the Plague Marines. Garo. Grolgor gurgled, his voice a wet rasp of flies. Join us in the garden. The battle for the Eisenstein was fought in claustrophobic corridors. The bolters roared, but the rounds passed through the rotten bodies of the traitors without stopping them. Garo, wielding his power sword Libertas, fought with the desperation of a man who sees his world ending. This was no longer a war of soldiers. It was a war of the soul. It was here that the first miracle of the New Age occurred. Euphrata Keeler, a remembrancer who had begun to worship the Emperor as a god, held back the tide of filth not with a weapon, but with faith. She held up the Aquila, and the monsters recoiled, burned by the golden light of her belief. It was impossible. It was irrational. It was the only thing that saved them. Garo, seizing the moment, initiated an emergency purge. He blew the airlocks of the lower decks, venting Grolgor and his abominations into the raw warp. The ship was cleansed, but the drive was dead. The Eisenstein was becalmed in the Immaterium, drifting blindly. Its Geller field failing, the beacon of sacrifice, they were lost. Without engines, they would eventually be devoured by the demons scratching at the hull. Garo made a choice that defied all logic. He ordered the ship's warp drive to be overloaded and jettisoned. The resulting explosion would destroy them if they were too close. But the psychic shockwave might act as a beacon, a flare in the dark to attract any nearby Imperial vessels. They cast the drive into the abyss. It detonated. The Eisenstein was hurled out of the warp, crashing back into real space, battered, broken, and drifting. They waited in the cold silence. Days passed. Hope began to fade. And then the stars were blotted out. The Phalanx, it was not a moon. It was a fortress. The Phalanx, the flagship of the Imperial Fists, the largest mobile battle station ever constructed by human hands, eclipsed the viewports. It was a mountain of gold and gunmetal, a floating city that bristled with enough firepower to crack a planet. The Eisenstein was seized by tractor beams and pulled into the colossal docking bays of the Phalanx. The stone man Nathaniel Garo, weary, his armor scarred, stood on the deck of the Phalanx. He was surrounded by the Huskarls, the elite Terminator Guard of the 7th Legion. And striding towards him was a giant, Rogel Dorn, the Praetorian of Terra, the Emperor's Stone. Dorn was a statue brought to life. He wore armor of burnished gold, his face a mask of stoic discipline. He was the embodiment of loyalty, unbending and unbreakable. "Identify yourself," Dorn commanded, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in Garo's chest. Why does a Death Guard frigate drift in the void, fleeing its own fleet? Garo knelt, not in submission, but in exhaustion. "Lord Dorn, I bear word from Isstvan. I bear treason." The unwelcome truth. Garo told the story. He spoke of the virus bombs. He spoke of Angron's rage, of Mortarian's silence, of Fulgrim's preening. He spoke of the War Master Horus. When Garo said the words, "Horus has betrayed the Emperor," the air in the room vanished. Dorn did not shout. He did not weep. He moved with the speed of a striking viper. His massive backhand struck Garo, sending the battle captain flying across the room. Garo crashed into a bulkhead, his armor cracking, blood filling his mouth. "Lies!" Dorn roared, his stoicism shattering. "You dare? You dare stand in my presence and slander my brother? Horus is the War Master. He is the brightest of us. To suggest he would turn is madness. It is heresy." Dorn drew his massive chainsword, Storm's teeth. He stood over Garo, ready to execute the traitor who dared speak such filth. "Kill me if you must, Lord." Garo spat, blood on his teeth. "But listen. The blind cannot see the knife until it cuts them. Look at the proof." Mercedes Aliton, the remembrancer, stepped forward, trembling. She held up a picked caster. It contained the recordings from the Eisenstein sensors. Dorn paused. The blade hovered inches from Garo's neck. "Show me." The breaking of the heart, the hololith flickered to life. Dorn watched. He saw the vengeful spirit open fire. He saw the virus bombs fall. He saw the Corral City dissolve into sludge. He saw the firestorm. He heard the transmission from Saul Tarvitz. He saw the sons of Horus slaughtering their own brothers. The primarch of the Imperial Fists stood in silence for a long time. The giant shoulders slumped, just a fraction. The face that was stone cracked, revealing an abyss of grief. Horus, his brother. His friend. The hope of the Imperium. "It is true," Dorn whispered. The words sounded like tombstones falling. Then the grief vanished, replaced by a cold, glacial fury. The stone had cracked, but underneath was iron. The retribution Dorn turned to his Huskarls. "Signal the fleet." Full alert status. He looked down at Garo. "You have done your duty, Nathaniel. You have brought me a nightmare, but I thank you for waking me." Dorn's mind, a fortress of logic, began to construct a war. He could not leave the Sol system undefended. The Emperor was secluded, and Mars was silent. He had to stay and fortify the palace. "I will not go to Isstvan," Dorn declared. "I must secure Terra, but retribution will be sent." He commanded his first captain, Sigismund, the greatest duelist of the legions, to assemble a fleet. "Take the third of my legion," Dorn ordered. "Take the retribution fleet. Go to Isstvan V, join with Ferrus Manus, Corax, and Vulcan. Crush this rebellion before it spreads. Bring me Horus in chains or bring me his head." The knights errant, as the retribution fleet prepared to launch. A shadow stepped from the corners of the room. It was Malkador the Sigillate, the regent of Terra, an ancient psyker who served as the Emperor's right hand. "Rogel," Malkador rasped, leaning on his staff. "The captain ... Garo, he has no legion now. He is an orphan of war." "He is a warrior," Dorn replied. "He will fight." "He will," Malkador agreed. "But not as a legionary. The galaxy is changing, Rogel. We need men who are not bound by the old ways. Men who can move in the shadows." Malkador looked at Garo with eyes that held the weight of millennia. "Come with me, Nathaniel. I have a new purpose for you. A purpose that requires a gray virtue." Garo looked at his sword, Libertas. He looked at the vast fleet of the Imperial Fists preparing for war. He knew his war was different now. "I am yours, Lord Regent," Garo said thus, while the Retribution fleet sailed toward the trap at Isstvan V. The first seeds of the Inquisition and the Grey Knights were sown in the shadows of the Phalanx. The warning had been delivered, but it was already too late to stop the massacre that was about to unfold. The Urgal Depression Isstvan V was a dead world of black sand and volcanic glass. The traitors had entrenched themselves in the Urgal Depression, a natural amphitheater surrounded by jagged ridges. It was a fortress prepared by a master tactician. Horus knew retribution was coming, and he had chosen his killing ground. In orbit, the Loyalist fleet blocked out the stars. It was the greatest gathering of Astartes' might since Ulanor. 3 legions led the vanguard: the Iron Hands, the Salamanders, and the Raven Guard. They were the first wave. Ferrus Manus, the primarch of the Iron Hands, was in command. His rage was a cold, burning star. Fulgrim, his closest brother, had tried to seduce him to chaos, and Ferrus had rejected him. Now Ferrus sought only one thing: to wrap his metal hands around the Phoenician's throat. He was impatient. He did not wait for the full strategic cogitation. He ordered the assault. The steel rained the sky, burned as thousands of drop pods screamed through the atmosphere. They landed amidst the traitor lines with the force of meteors. The doors blasted open, and the loyalists surged forth. On the left flank, Vulcan and the salamanders advanced through a storm of fire, their flamers turning the traitor trenches into ovens. On the right, Corvus Corax and the Raven Guard moved like shadows, striking with surgical precision, dismantling the traitor heavy weapons teams. But in the center, there was only the Iron Hands. Leading them was Ferrus Manus. He was a juggernaut of destruction. Wielding Forgebreaker, the massive hammer gifted to him by Fulgrim in happier times, a tragic irony. As Fulgrim wielded the sword Fireblade forged by Ferrus, Ferrus smashed through the lines of the Emperor's children, his eyes fixed on the purple and gold banner of his brother. The battle was ferocious. The traitors, sons of Horus, World Eaters, Death Guard, and Emperor's children fought with the desperation of cornered rats. But the fury of the loyalists was undeniable. They pushed the traitors back. They were winning. The second wave, after hours of grueling combat, the loyalists were exhausted. Their ammunition was low, their armor rent. But help was at hand. The scanners shrieked the arrival of the second wave. 4 more legions descended from orbit to relieve their brothers, the Iron Warriors. The Night Lords, the Word Bearers, and the Alpha Legion. Vulcan and Corax, wise to the flow of battle, ordered a tactical withdrawal. They would fall back to the drop site, let the fresh reserves take the front line, and then crush the traitors between the hammer and the anvil. Fall back. Corax signaled, let the Iron Warriors take the wall. But Ferrus Manus would not retreat. He saw Fulgrim. He saw the traitor within reach. No. Ferrus roared over the Vox. We finish this now. The flesh is weak. Iron prevails. Leaving his brothers to retreat, Ferrus and the veteran Morlocks of the Iron Hands plunged deeper into the enemy lines. Cutting themselves off, the turning of the guns, the Salamanders and Raven Guard reached the landing zone. They saw the fortifications erected by the Iron Warriors, bunkers, trenches, kill zones. They saw the Night Lords perched on the ridges like vultures. They saw the Word Bearers chanting. They expected medical aid. They expected resupply. Instead, a single flare shot up from the lines of the War Master. It was Red Dot in the Urgal Depression. The trap snapped shut. The Iron Warriors opened fire. Not on the enemy, but on the retreating Salamanders. The Night Lords screamed and descended upon the Raven Guard. The Word Bearers unleashed demons from the warp. The Alpha Legion struck from every shadow. It was not a battle. It was an execution. Caught in the open, sandwiched between the traitors they had been fighting and the reinforcements who had just betrayed them, the Loyalists were slaughtered. Thousands of Astartes died in the first minute. Tanks exploded. Drop ships trying to lift off were swatted from the sky by the Iron Warriors' precise artillery. Betrayal. Vulcan roared, surrounded by a ring of fire as his sons died around him. They have all turned. All of them. The duel of the Phoenix and the Gorgon in the center of the kill box. Ferrus Manus realized too late that he was alone. But he did not care. He had found Fulgrim. The two Primarchs clashed in a circle of iron and blood. It was a duel of titans. Ferrus, strong and relentless, wielded his hammer with earth-shattering force. Fulgrim, fast and graceful, danced with the demon sword he had taken from the Lar Temple. Sparks flew as adamantium met warp-forged steel. They fought not just with weapons, but with words, screaming accusations of betrayal and weakness. Ferrus was the stronger. His rage gave him focus. He caught Fulgrim's blade, shattering the Phoenician's guard. With a roar, Ferrus swung Forgebreaker, aiming to crush Fulgrim's skull. Fulgrim fell back, losing his balance. He was beaten. Ferrus raised the hammer for the killing blow, but in that moment, the demon inside the Lar blade whispered to Fulgrim. It promised him strength. It promised him survival. All he had to do was let go. Fulgrim surrendered to the power. His speed increased unnaturally. He surged up, his blade flashing faster than thought. He struck. Ferrus Manus, the Gorgon, the master of the Iron Hands, stopped. A thin red line appeared on his neck. He looked at his brother, his eyes wide with sudden clarity. In that final second, the rage vanished, replaced by a profound sadness. His head slid from his shoulders. Ferrus Manus fell. The first Primarch to die. The descent into madness. Fulgrim stood over the headless corpse of his brother. The blood slicked his armor. For a moment, the demon's hold slipped. Fulgrim saw what he had done. He saw his best friend, his brother, dead at his feet. A scream of pure, unadulterated horror ripped from Fulgrim's throat. He fell to his knees, clutching the head of Ferrus, weeping. "What have I done?" He wailed. "I can't bear this." "I can take the pain away," the demon whispered, slithering into the cracks of his broken mind. "I can give you oblivion." "Yes," Fulgrim sobbed. Take it all." The Primarch's eyes rolled back. When they opened again, they were black pits of malice. Fulgrim was gone. The demon of the blade was in control. It smiled, picked up the head of Ferrus Manus, and offered it to Horus as a trophy. The shattered legions with Ferrus dead. The rout became a massacre. The Raven Guard were decimated. Corvus Corax, wounded and hunted by the Night Lords, rallied the few survivors and vanished into the wastes of Isstvan V. He was forced to do the unthinkable, to leave his dying sons behind to ensure the survival of the Legion's gene seed. "Nevermore," he whispered, fading into the shadows. Vulcan and the Salamanders refused to break. They fought back to back, a circle of green in a sea of traitors. But then, the unthinkable happened. The traitors unleashed a tactical nuclear strike on the Salamander's position. When the mushroom cloud cleared, Vulcan was gone. Captured by Conrad Kurz, the Night Hunter, to be tortured for eternity. The road to Terra is open. The Dropsite massacre was absolute. 3 loyal legions were effectively destroyed. Their Primarchs were dead, missing, or captured. The traitor ranks had swelled to 8 legions. Horus stood upon the ridge, looking down at the field of corpses. The black sands were red with blood. "It is done," Horus said, his voice cold. "The way to Terra is clear." The galaxy had not just burned. It had been broken. The age of the Primarchs was over. The age of the monster had begun. The Horus Heresy. The Age of Darkness Part 9. The Death of Innocence and the Red Planet's Fall. The Twin Empires, while the galaxy burned at Isstvan. A quieter, more insidious poison was being administered to the heart of the Sol system. Mars, the Red Planet. The sister empire to Terra. Since the Treaty of Olympus Mons, the Mechanicum had supplied the Great Crusade with its ships, its bolters, and its titans. Without Mars, the Imperium was a warrior without a sword. But the Mechanicum was not a monolith. It was a feudal web of forge worlds and magos, riven by doctrinal schisms. There were those who viewed the Emperor as the Omnissiah, the physical avatar of the machine god, and there were those who viewed him as a false idol, a tyrant who shackled their quest for knowledge with arbitrary restrictions on artificial intelligence and warp technology. KELB or -HAL. The Fabricator General of Mars sat at the center of this web. He was immense, more building than man, a creature of cables and logic stacks. And he was bitter. He chafed under the Emperor's restrictions. The Serpent's Code Horus knew this. He sent his emissary, the Adept Regulus, to Mars. Regulus did not bring threats. He brought gifts. He brought SDC fragments recovered from the vanquished Auratian technocracy. He brought promises of autonomy. And he brought a key. Horus offered Kelberhal, the one thing the Emperor had forbidden: access to the vaults of Moravik. Deep beneath the Martian crust, sealed by the Emperor's own hand during the unification, lay the forbidden technologies of the Dark Age of technology. Warp-infused engines, silica animus, AI, and chaotic logic-engines driven by a hunger for forbidden data. Kelberhal broke the seal. He opened the vaults. He did not find enlightenment. He found a virus. The scrap code. It was not a biological virus, nor a simple computer program. It was the scrap code. It was a mean virus of the warp, a cacophony of chaotic logic that infected not just software, but the soul of the machine. When the vaults opened, the scrap code screamed into the noosphere, the wireless data cloud that connected every tech priest, every servitor, and every cogitator on Mars. The effect was instantaneous and horrific. The noosphere, usually a realm of ordered golden light and flowing data, turned into a storm of screaming static and impossible geometry. Tech priests wired into the grid convulsed as their logic implants were overwritten with the gibbering madness of the warp. Servitors turned on their masters, tearing them apart with industrial drills. Automated assembly lines began to churn out twisted, demon-possessed engines of war. The death of innocence, they would call it. In a single second, the harmony of Mars was shattered. The civil war of Iron Mars erupted into civil war. It was not a war of ideologies, but of survival. The Dark Mechanicum, those loyal to Kelberhal and corrupted by the scrap code, turned their guns on the loyalists. Forges that had stood for thousands of years were vaporized by nuclear fire. Skittery legions, their command protocols hacked or corrupted, marched into radiation-soaked kill zones. But the true horror was the Titans, the Legio Mortis. The Death's Heads, long associated with Horus, had turned. Their god machines, the Dies Irae leading them, walked the iron sands, their horns blaring a scrap code chant that drove mortals insane. They marched against the Legio Tempestus, the loyalist stormlords. God machines clashed amidst the burning spires of Olympus Mongs. Volcano cannons melted armor plating. Power fists the size of buildings crushed reactor cores. The surface of Mars became a graveyard of giants. The heist of the Imperial fists on Terra. Rogel Dorn watched the red planet turn black with smoke. The betrayal of Mars was a catastrophe. If Mars fell, Terra would be cut off from supply. Dorn knew he could not reconquer Mars. He did not have the troops to fight a planetary war while fortifying the palace. But he could not let the traitors have everything. He summoned his first captain, Sigismund, and Captain Kamba Diaz. "Go to Mars," Dorn ordered. "We cannot save the planet, but we must save the armor. We must save the weapons. Secure the Mondo Oculum and Mondo Gamma forges. Take what we need for the defense of Terra, and then get out." It was a raid on a planetary scale. The Imperial Fist's fleet dove into the Martian atmosphere, braving the orbital defense grids. Sigismund and his Templars landed at the Loyalist forges. It was a race against time. While thousands of servitors and heavy lifters stripped the armories of every bolter, every suit of power armor, and every shell they could carry, Sigismund held the line. The Black Knight stood against waves of corrupted scuttery and Dark Mechanicum abominations, his sword reaping a toll of metal and oil. They succeeded. As the transport ships lifted off, heavy with the munitions that would one day defend the Eternity Gate, the forges behind them were overrun. The fall of Magma City in the southern hemisphere. One last bastion of loyalty remained. Magma City, the forge of the adept Coriel Zeth. She was a visionary who sought to capture the knowledge of the universe not through the warp, but through the Akashic Reader. She rejected the mysticism of the Omnissiah for the purity of reason. Kelb, or Dashel, could not allow her to live. He sent the Legio Mortis, the Dies Irae, an Imperator-class Titan, a walking city of destruction, laid siege to Magma City. Zeth's defenders fought bravely, but they were outmatched. The scrap code infiltrated their defenses, shutting down void shields and jamming weapons. As the Dies Irae breached the city walls, Zeth made her final choice. She would not let her knowledge or her city fall into the hands of traitors. She triggered the failsafes of the magma geysers that powered her forge. "Deny them everything," she commanded. The tectonic locks disengaged. A tidal wave of molten lava, suppressed for centuries, erupted. Magma City was not conquered. It was consumed. The Daisy survived, its void shields flaring against the heat, but the prize it sought was gone. Zeth and her loyalists burned, defiant to the end. The blockade of the Red Planet, the raid was over. Sigismund returned to Terra with the supplies. The remaining loyalists on Mars were either dead or fleeing into the wastes to wage a guerrilla war that would last for years. KELB or Dasho ruled Mars. The Dark Mechanicum began to churn out demon engines and corrupted titans for the War Master's armies. Rogel. Dorn looked at the red star in the sky, now a hateful eye glaring at Terra. He ordered the Imperial Navy to establish a blockade. Nothing would leave Mars. The Sol system was fractured. The enemy was inside the house. The supply lines were cut. The Titan legions were split. The greatest industrial capacity in human history was now working for Horus. The noose around Terra was tightening. And far away, in the realm of Ultramar, another tragedy was unfolding. Logar Aurelian was about to launch his Shadow Crusade, and he intended to drown the 500 worlds in blood, to summon a storm that would cut the galaxy in half. The empire within an empire. While the galaxy burned and Mars fell into madness, the realm of Ultramar stood as a beacon of reason. It was the 500 worlds, a pocket of civilization ruled by Robut Guilliman, the avenging sun. Here, the Great Crusade was not just about conquering. It was about building. Guilliman believed in infrastructure, in law, in a future where the Astartes were statesmen as well as warriors. But Logar Aurelian, the primarch of the word-bearers, hated Ultramar. He hated its perfection. He hated its secular logic. Ever since the Emperor had humbled him at Monarchia, forcing the Ultramarines to burn Logar's perfect city to the ground for the crime of worship, Logar had nursed a black, festering wound in his soul. Now, the War Master had loosed him. The muster at Calth, the trap was disguised as a mustering. Under the orders of the War Master, issued before the news of Isstvan fully broke, the Ultramarines and the Word-Bearers were to gather at the planet Calth to launch a joint campaign against the orcs of the Galactic system. Guilliman welcomed his brother. He sought reconciliation. He wanted to mend the rift caused by Monarchia. The 13th Legion gathered in orbit and on the surface of Calth, a high-tech, industrialized world. They were relaxed, weapons cold, expecting brotherhood. The Word-Bearers arrived not to fight alongside them, but to sacrifice them. The mark of Calth, the betrayal, did not begin with a shout, but with silence. The Campanile, a fleet tender ship hijacked by Word-Bearers cultists, accelerated to suicide speeds. It did not communicate. It smashed directly into the Calth Viridian anchor, the primary orbital dockyard. The explosion was blinding. Ships were vaporized. Debris the size of mountains rained down upon the planet's surface. The communications grid was instantly severed by scrap code, a gift from the traitor, Mechanicum. Before the Ultramarines could even understand they were under attack, the Word-Bearers opened fire. In the void, the treacherous fleet tore into the exposed flanks of the 13th Legion. On the ground, the Word-Bearers, alongside the twisted Gal Vorbak, the first possessed Marines, turned their bolters on their cousins. It was not war. It was ritual slaughter. The poisoned son Guilliman, aboard his flagship Macrag's Honor, watched his fleet burn. For 15 minutes he simply could not process the data. It was illogical. Why would Logar do this? Then, the Vox channel cracked open. Logar spoke. He did not offer surrender. He offered only mockery and the truth of the new gods. Guilliman's calculation turned to cold fury. Lorgar of Kalkus, he broadcasted. You may consider the following. 1. I entirely withdraw my previous offer of solemn parley. 2. You are to consider yourself a traitor. 3. I am coming for you, and I will kill you. But Lorgar had a weapon greater than fleets. His sorcerers began a dark ritual on the surface weapon platforms. They did not target the Ultramarines. They targeted the Viridian Star. They poisoned the sun. The star of the Calth system began to change. Its radiation output spiked to lethal levels. The atmosphere of Calth was stripped away. The surface became a radiation hellscape. The Ultramarines and the surviving population were forced underground into the arcologies and caves. The Underground War began a brutal, claustrophobic conflict fought in the dark, destined to last for years. The ruin storm, the slaughter at Calth was vast, but it was merely the spark. The deaths of millions of innocents and Astartes created a psychic resonance so powerful it tore the veil of reality, using the suffering of Calth as a catalyst. Lorgar summoned the ruined storm. It was a warp storm of galactic proportions. It erupted across the Immaterium, a wall of psychic noise that split the Imperium in two. It cut off Ultramar from Terra. It blinded the Astronomicon. It isolated the Loyalist legions, scattering them, leaving them lost in the dark. Terra was now alone. The Eater of Worlds, while the Ultramarines bled on Calth, the Shadow Crusade moved deeper into Ultramar. Lorgar was not alone. He traveled with Angron and the World Eaters. Angron was dying. The Butcher's nails, the archaeological devices hammered into his skull by the slavers of Nuceria, were eating his brain. They were ancient technology, impossible to remove, and they punished him for every moment he was not killing. They were driving him insane, and they were killing his body. Lorgar knew this. And Lorgar, in his twisted way, loved his brother. He wanted to save him. But his salvation was damnation. They arrived at Nuceria, Angron's homeworld. The world where he had been a slave. The world where the Emperor had teleported him away, leaving his gladiator brothers and sisters to die alone on the ridge of Dacia. Angron descended to the surface. He found the bones of his kin. He walked the dusty plains where he had failed to die. And he raged. The World Eaters and Word-Bearers began the slaughter of Nuceria's population. It was a harvest of skulls to feed the pain engine in Angron's head. The return of the Avenging Sun, but Guilliman had not died at Calth. He had rallied his fleet, punched through the blockade, and hunted his brothers. He arrived at Nuceria, his heart heavy with the need to put down two mad dogs. The battle was titanic. 3 Primarchs clashed in the ruins of a Nucerian city. Guilliman fought Lorgar first. The Avenging Sun, disciplined and furious, battered the Aurelian. But Lorgar was no longer the weak scholar. He was swollen with the power of chaos sorcery. Then Angron joined the fray. Ngron against Guilliman. The Red Angel against the Avenging Sun. It was savagery against skill. Angron was a whirlwind of chain axes, screaming in agony and hate. Guilliman fought with power gauntlets, holding his ground, but Angron was stronger. The Butcher's nails were singing, pushing Angron past the limits of matter. The apotheosis as Angron beat Guilliman into the dirt. As he prepared to deliver the killing blow, Lorgar began his spell. He did not help Angron fight. He used Angron's rage. He used the pain of the Butcher's nails. He used the millions of dead Nucerians. "I save you, brother." Lorgar screamed, chanting the dark tongues. The sky turned the color of bruised blood. A bolt of warp lightning, thick as a titan, struck Angron. Angron did not die. He expanded. His armor fused to his flesh. His skin turned the color of fresh arterial blood. Great, leathery wings ripped from his back, spanning the width of the plaza. His face elongated, his teeth becoming iron fangs. The Butcher's nails were finally silenced, replaced by the eternal roar of corn. Angron was no longer a Primarch. He was a demon prince. He was the Red Angel, the chosen of the Blood God. He roared, a sound that shattered glass for miles. He turned his new, burning eyes on Guilliman, realizing that the situation had gone from a battle to a massacre against a demigod of the warp. The Ultramarines dragged their wounded Primarch away, teleporting him back to the fleet. They fled Nuceria, leaving the system to the monsters. The Shadow Descends Logar looked at his creation. He had saved his brother from death, only to enslave him to eternity. The Ruinstorm was complete. The Shadow Crusade was a success. Ultramar was burning, the Ultramarines were crippled, and Angron was an immortal avatar of destruction. Horus now had a flank secured. He had a storm that blinded the Emperor. And he had a brother who could never die, who would kill and kill until the stars went out. But in the north, another tragedy was concluding. A tragedy of wolves and sorcerers. Magnus the Red sat in the ruins of Taiska, waiting for the executioner. The Horus Heresy, the Age of Darkness Part 11. The burning of Prospero and the breaking of the Cyclops, the road to hell, the road to the greatest. Tragedy of the heresy was paved not with malice, but with good intentions. Magnus the Red, the Primarch of the Thousand Sons, was the most gifted of the Emperor's sons in the arcane arts. He had peered into the great ocean of the warp and believed he had mastered it. When Magnus discovered Horus's fall on Davin, he sought to warn his father. But the warp storms raised by Logar blocked astropathic communication. Desperate, arrogant, and terrified, Magnus enacted a forbiddance ritual. He projected his astral form across the galaxy, smashing through the psychic wards of the Imperial Palace to deliver his message directly to the Emperor. He succeeded. He delivered the warning. But the cost was absolute. The psychic wards he shattered were not just walls. They were the seals of the Emperor's great work. The Webway Project, the secret tunnel system intended to free humanity from the warp, was breached. Demons flooded into the tunnels beneath the palace. The Emperor was forced to remain on the Golden Throne, using his own will to hold back the tide of hell, turning him into a prisoner of his own seat. Magnus had not saved the Imperium. In his hubris, he had doomed it. The unleashing of the Wolf, the Emperor's wrath, was terrible. He did not see a loyal son warning him. He saw a sorcerer who had destroyed humanity's future. He issued the censure. Lemon Russ, the Wolf King, the Emperor's executioner, was dispatched. His orders from the Emperor were clear. Capture Magnus and bring him back to Terra to sit on the Golden Throne, to act as a battery to hold the webway shut while the Emperor fixed the damage. But the message passed through the hands of the War Master. Horus contacted Russ. He played upon the Wolf King's distrust of sorcery. He whispered poison. Magnus has fallen, Horus lied. He is possessed. He cannot be captured, brother. He is too dangerous. The Emperor wants him gone. Russ, loyal to a fault and hating the witchery of the Thousand Sons, accepted the lie. He did not come to arrest. He came to kill. The silence of Taiska on Prospero, the City of Light. Magnus saw the fleet arriving. He saw the Wolf King's ships, the Rafko leading them. He saw the Custodian Guard led by Constantin Valder and the Sisters of Silence, the soulless Null Maidens who were the bane of all Psychers. Magnus knew he had been tricked. He saw the strings of the Changer of Ways, Tzeentch, manipulating events. He realized that if he fought back, he would only prove the accusations of treachery true. So Magnus did the unthinkable. He lowered the planetary shields. He jammed his own Legion sensors. He scattered the Thousand Sons fleet. He accepted his punishment. He sat in his tower, waiting for the axe, hoping his death would satisfy his brother and spare his sons. The night of the Wolf, the bombardment began without warning. Magma bombs and lance strikes rained down upon Taiska, the City of Light, a marvel of crystal spires and libraries containing the sum of human knowledge was smashed into glass shards. The space wolves dropped from the sky in drop pods painted storm gray. They landed amidst the ruins, howling their war chants. They expected a fight against prepared sorcerers. Instead, they found confusion. The Thousand Sons were caught unaware. They died by the thousands in the opening minutes, slaughtered in their libraries and meditation chambers. But they were Astartes, and they were led by Ozek Ahriman, the chief librarian. Ahriman refused to let his brothers be butchered. Defying Magnus's order to stand down, Ahriman rallied the survivors. "Save the books," he cried. "Save the knowledge, and kill the wolves." The Sorcerer's War, the battle for Taiska, was a clash of philosophies. On one side, the raw, savage fury of the space wolves, wielding frost axes and bolters, supported by the anti-magic aura of the Sisters of Silence. On the other, the arcane might of the Thousand Sons. The Thousand Sons unleashed their full power. Telekinesis ripped tanks apart. Pyromancy turned wolves into ash. Precognition allowed them to dodge bolter fire. For a moment, it seemed the scholars might hold back the executioners. But Tzeentch was not done. The more the Thousand Sons drew upon the warp to save themselves, the more the flesh change the genetic curse Magnus had bargained to suppress returned. Ideally sculpted legionaries suddenly mutated into screaming masses of tentacles and spawn. The defenders of Taiska were fighting two wars, one against the wolves, and one against their own biology. The clash of demigods, as the space wolves pushed to the pyramid of Fodop, the sanctum of Magnus. The Crimson King finally acted. He could not watch his sons be exterminated. Magnus descended from his tower. He was a giant, his skin red, his single eye burning with the light of a dying star. With a wave of his hand, he crushed land raiders. With a word, he turned space wolves into glass. Then Lemon Russ found him. The Wolf King charged. He wielded the sword Mjolnir and the spear Gungnir, though he hated the spear. The two Primarchs collided with a force that cracked the planetary crust dot. It was magic against might. Magnus grew to the size of a titan, raining lightning. Russ, immune to much of the sorcery through his sheer primal nature and the protection of his armor, howled an anti-psychic scream that shattered Magnus's concentration. They fought through the ruins of the pyramid. Magnus struck Russ with a blast of eldritch fire, burning one of the Wolf King's hearts. Russ retaliated, his frost blade biting deep into Magnus's chest. The breaking of the back, the end came swiftly. Magnus, desperate to end the fight, gathered the energies of the great ocean for a final obliterating spell. But Russ's two wolves, Frecky and Jerry, leaped upon the red giant, distract him. Russ seized the opening. He did not use his sword. He rushed inside Magnus's guard, picked up his brother, and brought him down across his knee. The sound of Magnus's spine snapping was louder than the orbital bombardment. Magnus fell, broken. Russ raised Mjolnir to sever his brother's head, but packed with the Changer in that frozen second, lying in the dust of his ruined city, broken and defeated. Magnus looked into the warp dot. "I can save you," the Changer of Ways whispered. "I can save your legion. All you must do is say yes." Magnus looked at Ahriman, fighting a losing battle nearby. He looked at his dying sons. He looked at the Wolf King's blade descending. "Yes," Magnus whispered. The escape into the eye, the blade swung down, but it hit nothing. A vortex of pure warp energy erupted from Magnus's eye. It swallowed him. It swallowed Ahriman. It swallowed the surviving Thousand Sons and the spires of the city they defended. Reality folded. Taiska was ripped from the surface of Prospero and transported through the warp, depositing the Legion not into oblivion, but onto the planet of sorcerers, deep within the Eye of Terror. Lemon Russ stood alone in a crater, surrounded by silence. He had won. He had burned the Witch Planet. But he had failed his orders. He had not captured Magnus. He looked up at the sky, where the rain was turning to black ash. He felt a hollowness in his gut. He had been the Emperor's loyal executioner, but he had the sinking suspicion that he had just played the role of a pawn in a game he did not understand. The Lost Son. Magnus the Red was now a demon prince of Tzeentch. The 10th Legion belonged to the Chaos God of Change. The Emperor had lost his battery for the Golden Throne. He was now permanently bound to it, forced to endure eternal agony to keep the portal closed. The tragedy was complete. The board was set for the siege. The Loyalists were shattered, scattered, or bound. Horus had the path to Terra, but before the final siege could begin, the ruin storm had to be broken, and the angel Sanguinius had to face his own demons on the road to the throne world. The fate of the angels. For years, the ruin storm had split the galaxy, isolating Terra in a shroud of psychic screaming. Behind this wall, in the realm of Ultramar, 3 Primarchs had gathered: Reboot Gilliman, Lion L. Johnson of the Dark Angels, and Sanguinius. Fearing Terra had already fallen, they established Imperium Secundus, a contingency empire to preserve humanity's light, but it was a lie born of desperation. Sanguinius, plagued by visions of his own death, realized the truth: the Emperor still lived. Terra still stood, and destiny demanded the angel be there for the final end. United by duty, the 3 brothers launched a desperate crusade to break the ruin storm. The Lion and Gilliman acted as the distraction, drawing the fury of the traitor fleets and the demons of the warp upon themselves. They carved a path of blood through the blockade, allowing Sanguinius and the Blood Angels to punch through the veil and race for the throne world. Sanguinius arrived on Terra, a beacon of hope in the darkening sky. But he brought with him the knowledge that the Lion and Gilliman were too far behind. When the final bell tolled, Terra would stand alone, the gateway to hell. Beta Garman, before Horus could strike the Sol system, he had to pass the final gatekeeper, the Beta Garman star cluster. It was the primary industrial and muster point for the Sigmetum Solar Dahir. The Titan death took place. Rogel Dorn, knowing he could not defeat Horus in the open void, sought to bleed him dry. He deployed the Titan legions loyal to the throne. The scale of the battle was biblical. Thousands of god machines, warlords, reavers, and warhounds clashed on the dust plains of Beta Garman. It was a war of giants. The ground turned to glass under the barrage of volcano cannons and plasma annihilators. Legios that had walked since the age of strife were extinguished in hours. The Legio Solaria, Imperial Hunters, and Legio Defensor, Nova Guard, fought until their reactors went critical, taking traitor engines with them in nuclear fire. Horus won, as he inevitably would. The sheer weight of numbers and the sorcerous aid of the Dark Mechanicum overwhelmed the Loyalists. But the Titan death bought Terra time for Dorn to turn the Imperial Palace into the most fortified structure in human history. The Solar War, with Beta Garman in ashes. The War Master's armada entered the Sol system. It was a fleet of such magnitude that its gravity tides caused earthquakes on Earth. Tens of thousands of warships, from sleek Astartes strike cruisers to bloated, cathedral-like battleships of the Dark Mechanicum, blotted out the stars. Rogel Dorn had prepared 5 spheres of defense, concentric rings of fortifications stretching from Pluto to Terra. He commanded the defenses from the Phalanx, the massive star fortress orbiting Terra. The war for the solar system was a multi-dimensional nightmare on Pluto. The Alpha Legion, the Hydra whose loyalties remained an enigma even to themselves, had already infiltrated. Dorn personally slew Alpharius, or perhaps Omegon, in a duel on the moons of Pluto, driving a chainsword through his brother's skull. But the sabotage was done. The outer sensors were blind dot at the Mandeville points. The traitor fleet materialized. They did not come alone. They brought the warp with them. Sorcerers of the Word Bearers conducted a ritual on the Comet Shrine of the Unity, summoning Samuz, the demon prince of the Ruin Storm, directly inside the solar defenses. Reality buckled. The laws of physics in the Sol system began to degrade. The sun dimmed. The void filled with the laughter of thirsting gods. The fall of the spheres, one by one. The defensive spheres collapsed. Uranus and Neptune fell to the Death Guard. The silent, rot-filled ships of Mortarion drifted through the minefields, their hulls impervious to conventional weaponry. Spreading plagues that rusted the void stations from the inside out. Jupiter, with its massive Jovian shipyards, was the site of the greatest void battle in history. The Imperial Fist's fleet, led by Sigismund, fought with a cold, disciplined fury. But the Iron Warriors, led by Perturabo, countered them with cold logic. Perturabo, the master of siege, dismantled Dorn's defenses piece by piece, calculating the trajectories of debris to act as shields for his own ships. Mars, already held by the Dark Mechanicum, erupted, its orbital defense platforms turning their guns on the fleeing Loyalist ships. The Wolf's gamble, amidst the encroachment, one last desperate gambit was played. Lemon Russ, the Wolf King, refused to wait on Terra to die. Against Dorn's wishes, he took the Space Wolves and charged the Vengeful Spirit at Trisol Ian. It was a suicide mission. Russ boarded the flagship. He fought Horus, the Wolf King's spear, Gungnir, which possessed the power of truth, pierced Horus's side. For a moment, the corruption of chaos wavered. The true Horus surfaced, horrified by what he had become, but the moment passed. The power of the four gods reasserted itself. Horus broke Russ, battering him to the brink of death. The Space Wolves dragged their unconscious king away, fleeing into the void. They had failed to kill the War Master, but the wound Russ inflicted would not heal. It was a festering weakness in Horus's armor, a ticking clock on his own life. The capture of Luna, the traitor fleet reached the moon. Luna, the genetic cradle of the Astartes, the home of the Selenar gene witches, Jagatai Khan and the White Scars, launched hit-and-run attacks from the Lion's Gate spaceport, trying to harass the landing zones, but the volume of fire was too great. The sons of Horus descended upon the moon. Abaddon, the first captain, led the assault on the Somnus Citadel. He slaughtered the gene witches, seizing the gene tech that had helped create the legions. With Luna captured, the guns of the moon were turned toward Terra. The Skyburns Terra was now naked. The final sphere was the Aegis, the atmospheric shields of the throne world. From orbit, the Vengeful Spirit and the Iron Blood, Perturbo's flagship, began the bombardment. Macro cannon shells the size of skyscrapers rained down. Lance strikes boiled the last of Earth's oceans. The hives of Europa and Nordafrika were flattened. The Aegis held for days, a shimmering golden dome powered by the psychic will of the Emperor on the throne. But the strain was immense. Inside the palace, Sanguinius walked the walls. His presence was the only thing keeping the morale of the mortal soldiers from shattering. He looked up at the burning sky, his angelic face sorrowful. He knew the lion was too far away. He knew Gilliman would not make it. "They are here," Sanguinius whispered to Dorn. Dorn nodded, his face a mask of granite. He donned his helm. "Let them come," the Praetorian said. "We are the stone. We do not break." The first lander, the bombardment ceased. A silence more terrifying than the noise fell over the palace. Then the sky tore open. Drop pods, assault rams, and stormbirds descended like a plague of locusts. They were painted in the colors of the Lost Legions, the sea green of Horus, the blood red of the World Eaters, the rot green of the Death Guard, the midnight blue of the Night Lords. The first traitor boot touched the soil of Terra. The siege had begun. The ultimate fortress, the Imperial Palace, was not a castle. It was a continent, encompassing the Himalayan mountains. Its walls reached into the stratosphere, topped with void shields and bastions the size of cities. Rogel Dorn had spent years turning it into the most formidable defensive structure in human history. But Perturabo, the Lord of Iron, had spent years studying how to break it. The siege began with a bombardment that lasted for weeks. The earth shook so violently that the tectonic plates of Terra fractured. Ash choked the atmosphere, turning day into eternal twilight. Against the walls, the traitors threw everything. Hordes of beastmen and cultists were used as chaff to deplete the ammunition of the defenders. Then came the legions. The World Eaters charged the walls, climbing the bodies of the dead. The Death Guard marched through the poisonous smog they created, their bolters tolling like bells. The Iron Warriors directed precise artillery strikes, finding the microscopic weaknesses in the void shields. The Khans ride the White Scars, chafing under the static defense, demanded to attack. Jegatati Khan, the Warhawk, refused to die behind a wall. Seeing a weakness in the traitor lines, the Lion's Gate spaceport, he led a sortie dot. It was a ride of glory. The jet bikes of the White Scars flew over the trenches, their tulwars flashing. The Khan dueled Mortarion amidst the wreckage of the spaceport. It was speed against endurance. Though the Khan was weary, he succeeded in retaking the port, splitting the traitor forces and buying precious time for the inner sanctum. The war in the webway, while the surface of Terra burned, a second secret war was raging beneath the palace. The Emperor was not idle. He was fighting for the soul of humanity. When Magnus broke the psychic wards, he opened a rift in the Webway project directly into the dungeon beneath the Golden Throne. For 5 years, the Custodian Guard and the Sisters of Silence had been fighting a desperate holding action in the impossible tunnels of the Webway. They fought against endless tides of demons. It was a war without glory, a war of attrition where the golden elite of the Imperium died alone in the dark. The Emperor sat upon the Golden Throne. His psychic might focused entirely on holding the rift shut. If he faltered for even a second, Terra would be consumed by a new eye of terror. He could not aid his sons on the surface. He could not speak to them. He was a lighthouse keeper in a hurricane, burning his own soul to keep the light on. The Saturnine Gambit. As the outer walls fell, the traitors attempted a subterranean assault. They drilled beneath the Saturnine wall, hoping to bypass the defenses, but Dorn had anticipated this. He laid a trap dot in the dark tunnels beneath Saturnine. The elite of the Loyalists waited. Nathaniel Garro, Loken, and the kill teams of the Imperial Fists ambushed the Sons of Horus. It was a brutal melee in the dark. Abaddon led the traitor spearhead, and for the first time, the traitors were checked. The gambit failed. The walls held, the Eternity Gate, the siege ground on for months. The outer palace was lost. The defenders fell back to the inner palace, the Sanctum Imperialis. The final barrier was the Eternity Gate, a massive portal of adamantium and gold. It was the only way into the throne room. Before the gate, the Blood Angels stood. Sanguinius, exhausted, wounded from fighting the demon Kabanda, who had returned for a rematch, rallied the defenders. Angron, now fully ascended as a demon Primarch of Khorne, landed before the gate. He was a mountain of red muscle and brass, wielding a sword the size of a tank. He roared a challenge that shattered the morale of the mortal soldiers. "Come out and die." Angron bellowed. Sanguinius flew to meet him. The duel between the angel and the demon was the stuff of legend. They fought in the sky above the Eternity Gate. Sanguinius, fueled by foresight and desperation, moved like a beam of light. Angron, fueled by the rage of a god, struck with the force of an earthquake. Sanguinius grabbed the butcher's nails cables on Angron's head, the source of his brother's eternal pain, and ripped them out. Angron screamed, a sound of banishment. The Red Angel's physical form destabilized, and he was sucked back into the warp. The defenders cheered, but the victory was fleeting. The shields fall in orbit. Horus grew impatient. The Loyalists were stubborn. The Ultramarines rumor was becoming a reality. Gilliman was breaking through the ruin storm. The Lion was burning the traitor homeworlds. Time was running out. Horus ordered the vengeful spirit to lower its void shields. It was a gambit, a taunt. He was inviting the Emperor to come to him. He knew his father could not resist the chance to end the war with a single strike. He was right. The Emperor rises in the dungeon. The Emperor made his decision. He summoned Malkador the Sigillite. "Old friend," the Emperor said, his voice weak, "I must go to him." "You cannot leave the throne," Malkador rasped. "The rift will open." "You must take my place," the Emperor commanded. Malkador knew this was a death sentence. The psychic strain of the Golden Throne would burn his soul to ash in hours. But he nodded. "I am ready." The transfer was agonizing. As the Emperor stepped off the throne, Malkador ascended. The Sigillite's body withered instantly, his skin turning to parchment, his eyes burning out. But he held. The rift remained closed. The Emperor gathered his strike team, Sanguinius, Rogel Dorn, Constantin Valder, and a teleportation detachment of the greatest Terminators and Custodians remaining. They gathered in the teleportarium. The coordinates were locked on the vengeful spirit. "My son awaits," the Emperor said, drawing his sword, which burned with fire. The teleport flare activated. They vanished from Terra. But Horus was waiting. And the Chaos Gods were tricksy. The strike team was scattered. Sanguinius arrived alone in the War Master's throne room. Dorn was lost in the endless, shifting corridors of the ship, tormented by demons. The Emperor appeared on a lower deck alone. The final act had begun. The labyrinth of madness, the teleportation flare died, leaving Sanguinius standing in silence. He was alone. The vengeful spirit was no longer merely a ship of iron and ceramite. It had become a living organism, a cathedral of flesh and bone fused with the machinery of war. The walls breathed. The floor pulsed with the heartbeat of a dark god. The air tasted of copper and ozone, thick with the laughter of things that lived in the spaces between seconds. Sanguinius gripped his sword, the blade in carmine and his spear of Telesto. His wings, once pristine white, were scorched and ragged from the months of siege warfare on Terra. He was exhausted. His armor was cracked, his body pushed beyond even the limits of a Primarch. But his eyes were clear. He knew where he was. He knew what was coming. For years, the gift of foresight had plagued him with visions of this moment. He had seen the dark ship. He had seen the brother who would kill him. He had seen his own blood on the floor. He walked forward. The corridors twisted, trying to mislead him, but the angel walked with the certainty of the damned. He did not need a map. The gravity of the War Master's presence pulled him in. The court of the War Master, he entered the Stratageum, now transformed into a throne room for a god. The ceiling was lost in shadows that swirled with galaxies of dying stars. The floor was piled with skulls, not figurative, but literal mounds of bone. And there, upon a throne of black iron and brass, sat Horus. He was unrecognizable. The noble features of the Luna Wolf were gone, submerged beneath swollen flesh and armor that writhed with the spirits of the damned. The eye of Horus upon his chest was open, a window into the raw power of the warp. He radiated a majesty that was terrifying to behold. He was no longer just a Primarch. He was a vessel. The four gods of chaos, Khorne, Nurgle, Tzeentch, and Slaanesh, poured their infinite power into him. "Brother," Horus said. His voice was the sound of shifting tectonic plates. It carried the weight of a dying sun. "You have come." "I am here, Horus," Sanguinius replied, his voice soft, melodic, yet cutting through the psychic roar of the room. "I am here to end this." The last temptation. Horus stood. He towered over Sanguinius. The War Master wielded the talon of Horus, a lightning claw fitted with a combi bolter and Worldbreaker, a mace gifted by the Emperor himself. "End it?" Horus laughed, and the shadows laughed with him. "No, Sanguinius. We are just beginning. Look at you. You are broken. Your father has used you, spent you like a coin. He sent you here to die while he hides in the dark. Horus stepped down from the dais. Join me, brother. Of all our kin, you were the only one I truly loved. You are the angel. With me, you can be the god you were meant to be. We can reshape this galaxy. No more lies. No more tyrant. Just us. Sanguinius looked at his brother. He saw the corruption. He saw the madness. But deep down, buried under layers of warped filth, he saw the flicker of the man who had been his best friend. I see what you have become, Horus, Sanguinius said sadly. You are not a king. You are a slave. You speak of freedom, but you are a puppet dancing on the strings of monsters. Horus's face twisted in rage. I am the master of chaos. I am the sacrificed king. You are nothing, Sanguinius whispered. And I will not join you. The dance of death, Horus roared. The sound shattered the glass of the strategic displays. He charged out. The duel began. It was a battle between a hurricane and a hawk. Horus moved with a speed that belied his bulk, swinging Worldbreaker with earth-shattering force. Sanguinius took to the air, his wings beating desperately, dodging, weaving, striking with the blade in carmine. Sparks flew as adamantium met demon steel. Sanguinius struck Horus a dozen times in a second, his sword finding the joints in the Terminator armor, drawing black blood. But Horus did not feel pain. The Chaos Gods knitted his flesh back together as fast as Sanguinius could cut it. Horus struck back. The talon of Horus caught Sanguinius in midair, tearing through the angel's wing. Sanguinius cried out, crashing to the deck. He rolled, narrowly avoiding the descent of Worldbreaker, which smashed a crater into the floor. Sanguinius fought with the desperation of a man who knows he cannot win. He fought for honor. He fought for the memory of what the Imperium could have been. He channeled all his rage, all his sorrow, into a flurry of blows. He managed to pierce Horus's guard. The blade in carmine struck true, driving into a chink in the War Master's armor near the gorget. It was a wound that would have killed a mortal instantly. Horus grunted. He looked down at the sword stuck in his armor. Then he looked at Sanguinius. Is that all? Horus sneered. The death of the angel Horus grabbed Sanguinius by the throat with the talon of Horus. He lifted the angel off the ground. Sanguinius thrashed, stabbing with a dagger, kicking. But the grip was absolute. You should have joined me, Horus whispered. The War Master squeezed. He unleashed the psychic energies of the four gods directly into Sanguinius's body. The angel screamed. It was a sound that echoed not just through the ship, but through the soul of every blood angel on Terra below. Horus broke him. He snapped the angel's spine. He tore the white wings from his back. He crushed the beautiful body until it was a broken ruin. Then, he cast Sanguinius down. The great angel fell to the floor, dead. His eyes stared up at the ceiling, unseeing. The bright flame of the ninth Primarch was extinguished. The black rage on the surface of Terra. At the Eternity Gate, the Blood Angels stopped fighting. They froze. Then they began to scream. They felt the death of their father. They felt his pain, his despair, his final moment of betrayal. Their minds shattered. The noble sorrow of the Legion was replaced by a red, blinding madness. Horus! They screamed. Horus! Horus! They threw aside their bolters. They drew chainswords and combat knives. They charged the traitor lines, no longer soldiers, but berserkers. They tore World Eaters apart with their bare hands. They bit through the throats of traitor titans. They were lost to the Black Rage, a curse that would haunt their bloodline for 10,000 years. The Father arrives back on the vengeful spirit. The doors to the sanctum burst open again. The Emperor entered. He was glowing with a golden light that burned away the shadows. He held his sword, which flamed with psychic fire. He had fought his way through a hellscape of demons to reach this room. He stopped. He saw the broken body on the floor. He saw the white feathers soaked in red blood. He saw Sanguinius, his most perfect creation, the son who had never wavered, lying dead. The Emperor looked up at Horus. For the first time in millennia, the master of mankind felt true heartbreak. He had held out hope, however slim, that Horus could be saved, that the corruption could be purged. But looking at the corpse of Sanguinius, the Emperor realized the truth. The Horus he loved was dead. There was only the monster. Horus stood over the body, smiling. He was swollen with power, radiating an energy that rivaled the Emperor's own. "Father," Horus mocked, "you are late. Look at what your hesitation has cost you." The Emperor stepped forward. His face hardened into a mask of absolute judgment. The time for words was over. The time for mercy was gone. "I see you," the Emperor said, his voice a hammer blow to the soul. "I see the strings that move you, and I will cut them." The final duel for the fate of the species had begun. The War of Souls, the duel aboard the Vengeful Spirit, was not merely a clash of weapons. It was a war fought on every plane of existence. As the Emperor and Horus collided, reality screamed. The physical impact of the Emperor's burning sword meeting World Breaker shattered the architectural spines of the ship. But the psychic backlash tore new nebulas into the warp. Horus was a conduit for the infinite. The Pantheon poured their malice through him, swelling his form with mutations that defied sanity. He struck with the speed of a demon and the strength of a collapsing star. The Emperor, glowing with the golden light of the anathema, fought back with the precision of a master duelist. But the Emperor was losing. He held back. Deep within the monstrous visage of the War Master, the Emperor still sought the spark of his son. He believed, perhaps arrogantly, perhaps out of love, that he could strip the chaos powers away and save Horus Lupercal. Horus had no such reservations. He battered his father. He tore the Emperor's arm from its socket. He crushed the Emperor's ribs, piercing the golden lung. He seared the Emperor's face with psychic fire, melting flesh from bone. The lone guardian, the Emperor, lay broken on the deck, his light dimming. Horus stood over him. The talon of Horus raised for the final executioner's strike. "You are weak, father," Horus roared, his voice a legion of demons. "Weakness must be purged." Then, movement. A figure stepped between the fallen god and the ascending monster. It was not a primarch. It was not a custodian. It was a soldier. Alanius Pius, a mortal man in flak armor, clutching a lascan that was nothing more than a flashlight against the darkness. He stood before the War Master, trembling, but holding his ground. "Get out of the way," Horus hissed. "No," the soldier whispered. "Where I fall, 10 more shall take my place." Horus laughed. With a casual flick of his mind, he flayed the soldier alive. He blasted the mortal's soul into oblivion, erasing him from time and space. In that moment of senseless cruelty, the Emperor saw the truth. He looked at the creature standing above him and realized that Horus was gone. There was no son left to save. There was only a vessel of pure evil, a puppet of the ruinous powers that would consume humanity if left alive. The anathema, the Emperor's hesitation vanished. His love died, replaced by a cold, terrifying resolve. He drew upon the entirety of his psychic might, the power he had stolen from the gods on Moloch, the power of the Astronomicon, the power of every human soul. He focused it into a lance of pure white energy. Horus, sensing the shift, tried to strike, but he was too slow. The Emperor unleashed the lance. It struck Horus in the chink of armor opened by Sanguinius. It did not just burn flesh. It burned the soul. It scoured the chaos gods from Horus's being. For a brief, agonizing second, the corruption cleared. Horus Lupercal, the Luna Wolf, looked down at his father with his own eyes. He saw what he had done. He saw Sanguinius dead. He saw the Emperor broken. Double quotes, father. Horus wept, sanity returning for one heartbeat of infinite regret. End me, before they return. The Emperor did not hesitate. He gathered the last of his strength and obliterated Horus. He erased his son's soul from existence, leaving no echo in the warp. Denying the Chaos Gods their prize, the War Master was dead. The broken throne, the psychic shockwave, cleared the soul system of demons. The traitors, sensing the death of their avatar, broke. The siege collapsed into a rout. Rogel Dorn found the Emperor. The sight broke the Praetorian's heart. Sanguinius was dead. The Emperor was a husk, a charred ruin of a man, barely clinging to life. Take me to the throne, the Emperor whispered. They teleported back. In the throne room, Malkador the Sigillate was dust. His soul burned away to keep the webway gate closed. The tech priests worked feverishly to modify the Golden Throne into a life support engine. Dorn placed his father's broken body upon the machine. As the stasis fields engaged and the psychic conduits locked into his skull, the Emperor spoke his final words to his sons. The work is unfinished. The dream is dead. Now we must only survive. Trust in no one. I am, and no longer, among you. The machinery engaged. The Emperor fell silent. He was neither dead nor truly alive. He was the Carrion Lord, the battery that would light the Astronomicon and hold the gate to hell closed for 10,000 years. The scouring, the war did not end that day. It merely changed, led by a grief-stricken Robut Guilliman, who finally arrived to find the world in ashes. The Loyalists launched the scouring. They hunted the traitors. They drove the sons of Horus, the World Eaters, and the rest into the Eye of Terror, the hellstorm where real space meets the warp. The traitor Primarchs became demon princes, immortal monsters playing the great game of chaos. The Loyalist Primarchs, one by one, vanished, died, disappeared, or were put into stasis. Overwhelmed by the grief of their era, the grim darkness. 10,000 years have passed since that day. The Imperium of Man did not become the enlightened, secular utopia the Emperor dreamed of. It became a nightmare. To survive, humanity turned to the very thing the Emperor hated: religion. He is worshipped as a god. His silence is interpreted by corrupt priests. His armies fight endless wars in his name, burning billions of innocents to root out heresy. Science has become superstition. Progress is heresy. The Imperium is a rotting carcass, beset on all sides by aliens, mutants, and the returning traitor legions. Yet, it endures. It endures through the sheer, bloody-minded stubbornness of humanity. It endures because of the Astartes, the Space Marines, who still fight the long war. It endures because on the Golden Throne, a corpse still screams silently into the void, guiding the ships through the dark. The dream is dead. But the war is eternal. In the grim darkness of the far future, there's only war.